Before highways, before there were air-conditioned minivans and interstates with mile markers and rest stops, there were dirt roads, and there were people willing to follow them. In the years after World War I, a new kind of traveler emerged. They weren't wealthy, and they weren't staying in hotels. They brought their lodging with them, built from spare parts, mounted to early automobiles, packed tight with tin cans of food. They were called the Tin Can Tourists, and they came to Florida not just for warmth, but for possibility. They weren't just tourists, they were pioneers of a mobile lifestyle, and in many ways they laid the groundwork for how Americans would come to think of the open road. This is their story. You can trace the start of this motorized migration to 1919. That's the year a group of Model T driving nomads gathered in Tampa to form a club, though calling it that may be generous. The original members were a mix of middle-class retirees, war veterans, teachers, and tinkerers. Mostly Northerners, mostly white, mostly determined to winter anywhere but Toledo. They were called Tin Can Tourists, not because of their vehicles, but because of their diets. They lived on sardines, beans, and whatever else could be opened with a twist key. Frugality wasn't a lifestyle choice, it was survival. Their mobile rigs were often self-made, fashioned from salvage parts, scrap wood, and rusted dreams. Some had stovepipes sticking out of the roof. Others looked like mutant doghouses on wheels. And yet, this ragtag caravan grew into something powerful. By the mid-1920s, over 100,000 tourists were migrating to Florida each winter in these mobile contraptions. They traveled in convoys, held jamborees, and formed what became the first organized RV club in America, complete with officers, bylaws, and, get this, a secret handshake, because of course they did. So why Florida? Well, let's do the math. Florida was warm, mostly flat, and almost comically underdeveloped in the early 20th century. The perfect conditions for a person with no hotel reservations and a Ford with questionable brakes. The state welcomed these nomads, sort of. Cities like Sarasota and Tampa built municipal campgrounds to house them, and at a time when Florida's tourism economy was in its infancy, the Tin Can Tourists brought seasonal cash, curiosity, and chaos. But not everyone was a fan. Newspapers and elite Floridians called them trailer trash before the term even existed. There were murmurs of disease, property damage, even Bolshevism. In 1932, the city of Miami banned overnight trailer parking on public streets, comparing the influx to a swarm of locusts. Classism, meat tourism, it's a tale as old as Florida. Still, the Tin Can Tourists endured. They built their own miniature society, one that valued self-sufficiency, ingenuity, and mutual aid. Need a part? Someone had one. Need help rewiring your lights or patching a roof? Someone knew how. Their jamborees became full-blown festivals, complete with talent shows, lectures, and sermons. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. Like all roadside dreams, the glory days had an expiration date. Post-World War II, America's highways boomed. So did the RV industry. Motorhomes got sleeker, faster, and pricier. The post-war middle class preferred Holiday Inns over bean cans. The quaint DIY spirit of the Tin Can Tourist began to look outdated, like a rotary phone in a world of beepers. By the 1970s, the club was nearly defunct, but history, especially Florida history, rarely stays buried. In 1998, the Tin Can Tourists were revived by a small group of vintage trailer enthusiasts in Michigan. Today, there are hundreds of members across the U.S. and Canada. They don't just collect old campers, they preserve the culture, the community, and yes, the camaraderie of a very particular kind of nomadic weirdness. Annual rallies are now held at places like the Florida RV Super Show in Tampa and Camp Dearborn in Michigan. Shasta trailers, Spartanettes, and Airstreams from the 1940s and 50s are lovingly restored and displayed, some still containing their original kitchens and the faint scent of a century-old can of pork and beans. So, what do the tin can tourists teach us today? Their story isn't just about trailers, it's about reinvention. The idea that people can build something with their hands and set out towards some place unknown. They remind us that travel isn't always about luxury. Sometimes it's about resourcefulness. It's about deciding that comfort isn't the same thing as joy. In a modern world of curated itineraries and digital nomads, their journey speaks to something older and maybe more honest. They didn't chase views, they built a way of life. And in doing so, they helped shape how Americans experience the open road today, not as a chore or a calculation, but as something closer to freedom. You can still find them, these echoes of a century ago, not just in antique trailers or sepia-toned photographs, but in people who gather at vintage rallies and share coffee beneath shade trees. Some come in campers they restore themselves, others in ones passed down. The logo may be old, the trailers may creak, but the idea that travel can bring people together across states, across generations, remains. It began with a few tin cans, a few maps, and the belief that the road could lead to something better. And it still might. I'm ChadGallivanter. Thanks for listening, and be good to yourself.